Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of Intercultural Insiders. My name is John McGraw, and I help newcomers and expats connect across cultures to succeed in less time and pain. I am the founder of Hiyaku Coaching, which is dedicated to helping you create your pathway to success in a new culture. The purpose of Intercultural Insiders is to share the stories of people with intercultural experiences. So if you're feeling isolated or lost, you can hear something from the guests' experiences that can help you, even if it's just a reminder that you're not alone. And happy that we're already 1 week into spring. A number of things are going on. Many of my compatriots are in the midst of Ramadan, which started on Thursday, and excited to bring another conversation to you. Today, as you may know, is part one with Risa Hinokuma, but I do have a quick announcement to make first, and that is about another event being brought forth by my compatriots at Cafe New Canadians, and specifically, I am participating in the latest episode of Cafe New Canadians, Winning Strategies to Attract a Canadian Job Offer, which will be taking place on tomorrow, March 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So, if you're searching for employment but with minimal or no success so far, you can join us virtually to get actionable advice on where and how to find the right job for you in Canada. Fellow panelist Clark Glassford and I will share top job hunting do's and don'ts and how to convert applications into job offers. As a new immigrant, you will also learn about the Canadian workplace, what employers seek in candidates, and how to communicate your value to them. You can ask questions to us live or send them beforehand via email. To learn more and register, just follow the QR code that I've got up here on the screen and register there, get more information. Again, that is going on tomorrow, March 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And with that, let's get into our conversation with Risa Hinokuma, which is part one of a two-part interview. So Risa is a senior manager in customer service for Evernote. She is originally from Japan, but is currently based in Austin, Texas. And she has lived in the States for a number of years now. So in this conversation today, she talks about her early experiences with culture in the US and Thailand, some of the cultural differences that she's found in connecting and developing relationships, and customer service expectations in different cultures. So, as always, this interview is pre-recorded, but Risa is live in the chat today. So feel free to ask questions and comment during the interview. It's always great to have lively interaction in the chat. So it's an obvious, great learning opportunity. You can potentially connect with other people and find out more information and learn more than you would just from watching the interview alone. So I encourage you to participate in that way. So, without further wait, let's get into part one of that conversation with Risa Hinokuma. Risa, it's good to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, John, and hi, guys. My name is Risa. I was born and then raised in Japan. I moved to the United States after I graduated from college in Japan. Since then, I've been here, so it's a long time. I live in a city called Austin. It's in Texas. My first gig was working at the Old Navy. After graduating from college in Japan, I was the customer support rep. And then later I got the office job and I started looking into my options. Austin is well known as a technology. Right now we have a bunch of companies like Tesla, Oracle, Apple. Austin used to be called Silicon Hills because we have so many hills. Then I became a linguistic tester, and then I got an opportunity to translate online help and then test localized translated software. And later I got the opportunities at the other company. I work as a senior customer support manager at the Evernote, and I manage the global support team there. I like being a manager, and raising and coaching people is something I really enjoy. Besides work, I love dogs. I love going to dog parks, and I have many friends I made at the dog parks. It's nice to be in the show, and yeah, this is great.
I had no idea that there was a Silicon Hill in Austin.
Yeah, Silicon Hills, yeah, because we don't really use that terminology anymore, but back then, I think it was a thing because we had a lot of technology companies. We still do. And then especially after the pandemic started, a bunch of companies moved because compared to California, it's cheaper to hire people and then also operate here.
It's a really fascinating journey that you had going into technology companies and getting into Evernote as someone who emigrated to the States and is now in a managerial position. And to start off, I'd like to go further back into your background and just get a sense of your early experiences before you came to the States.
Thank you for asking that question. Actually, since I was a child, I wanted to be able to speak English. I wanted to actually live in the States, right? And then when I was in high school, I had an opportunity to study in Seattle for a few weeks. We came here with other students, and it was such a great experience. And after I came back from Seattle, I was actually working at the McDonald's in the American military base, so I could practice my English. I did that for a short time. It was actually a really interesting experience because that was our first job, which required me to speak English. But it was in Japan. And from there, I got into college, and then I was in the global and intercultural studies. So I was able to meet the students from other countries. And then I went to Thailand for a study tour. And a lot of my friends at college, they were bilingual. They grew up in other countries. Every day I heard English. That was my college life. And from there, because I knew that I had to move to the States, I actually got the certificate to teach Japanese as a foreign language. Like in English, a lot of times people call it ESL. In Japanese, it's the JSL. And then also, after graduating, I got certified to be a Japanese teacher. So I took the test called Nihongo Kyoiku no Kids Tenshiken. And then luckily I passed. That's what I did before I moved to the States. Growing up, I was very interested in American culture and English. And now I'm here.
You were really able to maintain your English, and getting a job on a military base is a great way to keep your English skills going. You really had a number of experiences even before you got to the States.
When I think about it, yeah, I did. And because I knew since I was a child, I wanted to live here, I think I tried to be able to speak English and then to be able to get the opportunity to explore.
And aside from improving your English ability, what was something else that you took away from all of those experiences?
It sounds a little bit cheesy, but when I went to Thailand, I learned that there are so many people in this world. To be aware that there are other cultures, there are other religions, other cultural aspects. I think those things really helped me grow. When I was in Thailand, I went to this not developed area. In the house where we stayed, they didn't have running water, and they were not as developed as Japan. And we had to take a shower with rainwater. And when I came back to Japan, the first thing was take a shower because I had a long flight, right? And then when I took a shower, I noticed just was a second, I got hot water, right? And then that moment I noticed that we are very fortunate. Right. I have to be aware that there are people living in a different setup. Some people don't have proper care, and we have to compassionate it because we are living in this one planet.
I can appreciate that awareness and that empathy for others that you developed from those experiences. And then, of course, you ended up back in the States.
Yeah. So when I moved here, I drove to Old Navy and got the job. And then from there, little by little, I started exploring more, right? And then I got a different job and another job. But yeah, the first 5 years was really tough because I think coming from Japan, especially after graduating from college, I had this confidence. And Japan, I was very motivated. I wanted to do this and do that. But I was like a baby because although I have a college degree from Japan, at that time, I didn't speak English as well as I do now. So my English was limited. Sometimes I had communication issues and I also misunderstood things, or sometimes culturally I wasn't comfortable, right? So I think I was trying to be more comfortable living here for the first 5 years.
You mentioned that there were some other cultural challenges.
Yeah, the culture, like food. For example, like in Texas, barbecue is very famous. But like when you think about barbecue and then when you think about Japanese barbecue, it's completely different. Let's say we go out for a dinner and then we eat this dish, but I'm like, what is this? Because it was my first time trying those things, those dishes. It actually took up 5 years for me to be able to say, oh, I like Texas barbecue. Not only food, like for example, driving. That's not something I had done before. So that's why I felt not comfortable. There are so many things like I had to get used to.
Before, when you were in Japan, you had that experience of working in McDonald's, serving on an American military base and having interactions with Americans there. And then you had your job in Austin, starting out at Old Navy. How was the experience working in an American context versus working and living in Japan? Was it pretty much the same, or were there other real differences that you noticed?
It's completely different. Commuting, just one example. A lot of people in Japan, they commute by train, by bus, right? But we're here by car. So let's say it's lunchtime, right? And then normally like people in Japan, oh yeah, let's go out for lunch, and then they walk. Right. Get to the restaurant or a convenience store and then get the bento or something like that. Over here, people drive to the restaurants, right? Because unless you're working downtown, most of those places are spread. So people are like, oh yeah, let's drive there. And that concept to me was just weird. So it's naturally the way you you communicate with people, interact with people change because the setups are different. It's just a different lifestyle. It's hard to find the similarities because it's just different. Like for example, in Japan, some people go out for a drink after work and stuff. I don't really have that after I moved to the States. And then occasionally we had a happy hour and stuff, but not as often as in Japan, Japanese working culture.
And how did that affect how you were able to bond with people in the States?
That's a good question. I think it was difficult because I mostly bond with other people, but then the drinking culture is different here. And then coming from college in Japan, like I'm used to that culture, right? Like, right. Okay, let's go out for a drink. That's why I think it was hard. And also I wanted to make friends with Japanese people. I wanted to make friends with Americans. But unfortunately, because I was very young back then, and then a lot of Japanese people living in Austin, they were more like in the late 20s and 30s and 40s. It was really hard for me to connect with them.
I can really see how that would be quite a challenge, going from essentially a completely different environment, as you said, being used to socializing one way and then having to adjust. So how did you adapt?
5 years was like a good milestone. And then from there, I started getting more comfortable. If something is wrong, I try to fix things. I was putting my efforts there. But at the same time, I think because I started getting used to it, I think naturally it became better and better. And then when it hit the 10 years mark, it became better again. And then another thing is I didn't limit my network. Right? Because I wanted to make a connection with Japanese people, but then I couldn't. It was really challenging to me. I spent time with Americans or non-Americans living here. So I think not limiting my network also helped.
So getting used to the circumstances and expanding your network. So you didn't just stay with other Japanese, you made efforts to connect with other people as well.
Yeah. That helped me improve my English skills because my experience with Japanese people here was very limited. That's why I spent time with a lot of Americans, and then it improved my English.
I think that also applies to adjusting to a new culture as well, because I think we've both known people who spend time in another country and not really adapt at all because they spend a lot of time just associating with other people from their home culture. I've seen that with expats in Japan as well. When you said you got used to it, what would you say helped you?
Good question. I think it's communication skills because I started learning how people make connections. I think I started paying attention to those things, like how people develop relationships, right? Like friendships. So I started imitating whatever people here are doing. It's a small thing. Like, for example, if you go out and if someone say hi, you say hi. So you do the same thing. When you run into other people, you say hi first. And then you ask, like, how are you doing? Are you okay? Those things. So I think I started being more proactive, reaching out to people, and I started imitating how people are communicating and then applying that. And that helped me to develop my communication skills.
See, the first 5 years or 10 years that you were in Austin, I'm not sure if you went back to visit Japan at all during that time or any of the time since you've been there. And I'm curious, was there anything that you noticed about how you felt about Japan once you got back? Maybe about a difference there or a difference in yourself?
There are things I notice whenever I go home. There is at least one or two things I'm like, oh, wow, it's a lot different here. One thing I noticed is, it's really funny. There was like this cake shop and then it looked so good. So I was like, okay, let's get some and then eat this like after dinner, right? So we got some and then we ate it after dinner. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not sweet. It was just like a big moment to me because I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm so Americanized. Actually, recently when I went back home, what I noticed is that people are rude to people in the service industry in Japan. We were at this restaurant and then customer, he was yelling at the staff there. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is really rude. I haven't really seen that in the States, maybe occasionally, but there's definitely cultural difference there. Every single time I go home, there are times like I notice those like cultural difference moments.
What do you think could be a possible explanation for that?
That's a great question. I think it's because in Japanese culture, there is a saying like Japanese customers are considered as a god, right? So basically the staff members and then customers they are not in the same level. I think that's what it causing that the rudeness. Over here, it's not like that. There are times that people in the service are not treated well, but most of the time I feel like their communication is more fair. So I think definitely that cultural perspective is causing that rudeness and some trouble.
That's certainly an interesting thing to notice and to think about the different reasons for that. So for the first 5 years, things, as you said, were rough. And then you started to pick up some ways of connecting. And then you started to move into technology. What can you say about that?
The team I manage is customer support. People reach out because people are having issues. So there are times like people get frustrated. But looking at the Japanese customers and like global English-speaking customers, there are some differences. One thing is that their expectation, Japanese customers' expectations are very high. As an example, whenever we do our customer service feedback, they say, oh, I had a great experience. The rep was really courteous and very helpful, and I am very happy with the service. Yet they give us 8 or 9 out of 10. That's expected in Japanese culture. But if you look at the English survey, and then English survey say, oh, I had a great experience, the rep was great, and it was very helpful, and I was able to solve the issue. It's 10. So I think it's just expectation, but also there are this mindset that they can't put 10. It's hard to describe this, but I think they are cautiously not putting 10 on purpose.
By all the comments, they were happy, but still not marking it as perfect. I've heard, at least in business side of things, there's the idea of constantly improving on processes. And I think that's something that seems to be in many Japanese companies. Do you think that maybe that idea that things need to be constantly looked at and improved, could that be a reason why there's that tendency to not give a 10?
I
If
think
there's a
so.
sense.
I think
Okay.
so. I don't know how exactly why they're doing that, but my assumption is that they're putting like 8 or 9 on purpose because there's this expectation that they might be able to provide better service in the future. But also this cultural thing that they don't want to put 10. In Japanese culture, you have to be humble. I think like their side, they are expecting us to be humble. So naturally, when we compare the customer service survey number, it's expected that Japanese number is lower because of that reason.
So that was part one of the conversation I had with Lisa, and looking forward to part two, which will be going on next week. So some of the things that really stood out for me from part one, and Lisa, of course, can also comment on the chat as well. It's the things have been kind of active there. Uh, was that importance of stepping outside of your comfort zone and not sticking with the same group of people, just sticking with your own culture. Obviously, when you are out of your home country or your home culture, there is that need to have that connection every uh, every once in a while, to have that, to touch that base. But if you only stick with that, you're going to miss out on so many opportunities. You'll be stuck, uh, losing opportunities to connect with other people. If you're here for work, to look for other job opportunities, particularly in Canada. And as I commented on, I had seen that happen with expats, fellow expats, when I was in Japan, and also we do see that here at times in Canada as well. So even though Risa's story was talking about her experiences in the US, this is something that can happen everywhere. So being like Risa and others who have that courage to step outside that comfort zone, it's really makes a big difference on your ability to connect and to succeed in the long term. And let's see. Quick comment from Risa in the chat. Other than weird orders, I learned friendliness and customer service in American culture. So I think this is commenting on her, as she mentioned, her early experiences working in McDonald's uh, early on the American military base. So, and yes, as she's commenting, I always try to be open minded when I meet new people, and that is essential as well. Avoiding that tendency to judge others, which can be uh, a very easy reaction to have. Just as I've said before, realizing that your culture, your way of doing things is really only one way. It's not necessarily universal. It may be the way that you prefer, but if you can accept that there are other ways of doing things and adapt to that when necessary, again, that's another ability to succeed, another opportunity to succeed. And I think that that's something, uh, obviously, in an ideal situation, both sides are adapting to each other, whether it's employers that are accommodating as well as employees adapting to the circumstances. But in the short term, I think you can only have control over yourself. So having that ability to adapt really opens up opportunities for you and creates the chance that you can, in the long term, act as a bridge between cultures for others in that circumstances. And I think Lisa has had that opportunity as well. So that really stood out for me. Also, of course, the stories about customer service is the idea, and I guess, Lisa, you had that sense of maybe reverse culture shock, uh, getting into the idea of how the many Japanese customers react, and the rating system as well. Not wanting to give a 10 for anything because we want the not the customers, but the companies and the employees to be humble. So those points really stood out for me. And Naz, of course, joining us as well from Bangladesh. Naz, it's good to see you in the chat as well. If you have any comments on some of the things that you saw or heard in the show, please feel free to comment on that. I want to mention again tomorrow the event for Cafe New Canadians that's going on tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So, again, just showing that quickly on the screen. I will be one of the panelists for, along with Clark Glassford, for Winning Strategies to Attract a Canadian Job Offer. It's not only about uh, the interview process, although that will be covered as well, but also how you can really show your value, what some of the expectations are in a Canadian context. And again, to find out more information, feel free to scan the QR code to find out more and to register for that event. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really excited by all of the work that New Canadians is doing, and Cafe New Canadians, their show. It's really something. If you are an immigrant, a newcomer to Canada, it is a valuable resource to check out. So I am looking forward to participating in that. And just going to take a look at some of the other comments here. Yes, he's adding in another thing I would like to add is that I always try to assume a good intent when I communicate with others. Yes, I think that is that. Thank you for mentioning that, Lisa. I think that is something that is essential. Um, Again, and by avoiding judging, if you can assume and give the benefit of doubt to others, then that will avoid you jumping to any conclusions that could muck up communications, create problems. So it's good to assume that and speak with others. And I think Lisa also will be talking quite a bit about that in the second part in her managerial style, which we get into that and how she approaches that with empathy and understanding and wanting to understand the other sides. And I think that's important whether you're a manager or you are doing any kind of job which involves connecting with other people, not just across cultures. Comment from Liliana as well. Hi, a little late in commenting today. Very insightful views from Risa about cultural differences and similarities. Yes, completely agree, Liliana. Thanks for that. Again, I think that the experiences that she has had and the reflections that she had from early on, and I mentioned in the comments earlier just the idea of going straight from college to go straight to another country, from Japan to the US at such a young age, and taking that risk to involve yourself and jump into a new culture. That takes a lot of courage, maybe some youthful enthusiasm too, but I think that is really admirable, and you've been able to learn a lot, and I really appreciate, Lisa, what you've been able to share today. And of course, that's not it, because we do have part 2 coming up next week with Risa on Wednesday, April 5th at the usual time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Really looking forward to sharing that second part. And in that part, Adisa is going to we talk a little bit about how native Japanese speakers react to learners of Japanese. And Adisa corrects me a little bit on some of my assumptions about that. As a Japanese learner, I'm quite interested in that. But she also talks about her own experiences managing across cultures and how that has affected her managerial style, but still having the same foundation, and cultural adaptation and identity, and what your sense of your identity is. So she gets quite a bit into that. So really looking forward to that. Encourage you to join in next week for that and share your comments as well. So until then, keep navigating your way between cultures towards your goals. Take care and have a great week.